Madam, but your husband.
Shh. He won't know, he's always very busy. Don't hold back, make me feel like a woman again.
Doris! 3 children! 3 children! Calm down, sir, please. Why should I calm down? Why? Why? Sir, you need to relax. Hitting her won't solve anything.
I'm sorry.
You're sorry? 3 children, Doris. None of them are mine.
No!
Please,
Help me!
stop! Calm down! Who's their father? Start talking, you prostitute! Who's their father?
Doris Okonkwo never wanted to marry Ozoemena Nwosu. At 23, fresh from the University of Nigeria in Nsukka with her accounting degree, she had dreams that stretched far beyond becoming someone's wife. She wanted to work in one of those big farms in Lagos, the ones with glass buildings and foreign clients. She wanted to travel, to see the world beyond Enugu, to build something of her own. But her parents sat her down one Saturday afternoon in their modest home at Independence Layout and presented her with a different future entirely. Ozoemena Nwosu came from money. His father owned 3 hotels in Enugu and 2 more in Lagos. The young man himself drove a Lexus and wore watches that probably cost more than her father earned in a year. Her mother spoke about security, about never having to struggle. Her father was more direct. Ada, this family needs this. Your brothers are still in secondary school. Your sister needs university money. Ozoemena's bride price will settle everything. Doris tried to protest. She barely knew the man. She didn't love him, but her arguments crashed against the wall of her parents' desperation. In the end, she agreed, not because she wanted to, but because she'd been raised to obey, to sacrifice, to put family needs above her own desires. The wedding in 2013 was everything a wedding should look like on the surface. The reception at Golden Royal Event Center glittered with lights and decorations. Doris's dress cost more than her father earned in 6 months. The guests ate until they couldn't move. The live band played while Ozoemena's friends sprayed naira notes that fell like rain. Doris smiled in every photograph, but anyone looking closely would have noticed the smile never quite reached her eyes. The first 2 years of marriage were tolerable. Ozoemena worked long hours managing parts of his father's hotel empire. He came home tired, wanted dinner, watched television, and went to bed. He wasn't affectionate or particularly warm, but he wasn't cruel either. He gave her money for housekeeping, bought her gifts on special occasions, and took her to family gatherings where she played the role of the dutiful wife. But there was a problem that grew louder with each passing month. Doris wasn't getting pregnant. The hint started gently. Ozoemena's mother would comment on certain foods that supposedly aided fertility. She suggested special prayers, particular herbs, specific doctors. Doris visited them all. She swallowed bitter concoctions that made her vomit. She attended all-night prayer vigils where prophets pressed their hands to her stomach and declared breakthroughs that never came. Every doctor said the same thing. Mrs. Nwosu, there's nothing wrong with you. You are perfectly healthy. When Doris suggested that perhaps Ozoemena should also get tested, his reaction was explosive. Are you mad? You want me to go and embarrass myself? Nwosu men are not weak. So she carried the burden alone. By the 4th year, Ozoemena's mother moved into the guest room to supervise things. What she actually did was make Doris's life miserable. You are squeezing the oranges wrong. That's why you are barren. You go to church, but your heart is not clean. That's why God is punishing you. Ozoemena changed too. He started coming home late, smelling of perfumes Doris didn't own. He stopped eating her food. His phone was always face down, and he took calls in the bathroom with the shower running. Then he started bringing them home. The first time, Doris thought she was dreaming. She came downstairs at midnight for water and saw strange shoes by the door, heard sounds from the guest room that made her stomach turn. She went back upstairs and cried into her pillow so no one would hear. It happened again and again, different women. Sometimes he didn't even hide it. He'd bring them in the evening, introduce them as business associates, and disappear into rooms while Doris sat in the kitchen, dying slowly inside. One morning, after a particularly loud night, Ozoemena's mother called her to the parlor. Doris, sit down. My son needs children. It's been 5 years. The family has decided Ozoemena will marry another wife. Before Doris could respond, Ozoemena walked in. Any woman that gets pregnant for me, that's the one I'll marry. You will become the senior wife. At least you'll still have a position in this house. He said it so casually, like he was discussing breakfast. That was when Doris's life became hell. Ozoemena didn't hide anymore. He brought women home 2, sometimes 3 times a week. Young girls, older women, single mothers, married women. He didn't care. Sometimes he'd bring 2 at once. Doris learned to disappear. She'd go to the backyard and sit in the dark, or walk around the compound until she was too tired to think. The sounds from the house followed her everywhere. The staff pitied her. The house help, the gate man, the gardener, they all saw everything and said nothing. What could they say? It was Oga's house. It was around this time that they hired a new driver. The previous one had stolen money and been sacked. The new one came through an agency, a quiet man in his early 30s named Dubem. Ozoemena barely acknowledged him beyond shouting orders. Dubem, wash the car. Dubem, why is the AC not cold? You are useless. I should sack you. Dubem would just nod. Sorry, sir. Then back to work. He lived in the boys' quarters at the back of the compound. He kept to himself completely, did his job, and never complained. Doris noticed him only the way one notices furniture. He was there, he served a function, but he wasn't really a person to her. Life continued its brutal rhythm. Ozoemena brought women. Doris disappeared into her suffering. His mother made comments about barrenness being a curse. One Friday night, Ozoemena came home with 2 women. The music was loud, the laughter louder. Doris tried to stay in the bedroom, but as the night wore on, the sounds got worse, much worse. She couldn't stay in that house another minute. She threw a whopper over her nightgown and left through the back door. She walked without direction, just needing to be anywhere but inside. She found herself at the back of the compound where mango trees created a pocket of shadow. There was an old bench there. She sat down and cried, deep sobs that shook her entire body. Madam, she looked up, startled. The driver stood a few feet away, holding a bottle of water. I heard you were crying. I thought you might need water. She took it gratefully. Thank you. He turned to leave. Wait, she said. Can you just stay for a minute? I don't want to be alone. He hesitated, then sat on the ground near the bench, keeping a respectful distance. They sat in silence while the sounds from the main house continued. It's not fair, Doris whispered. None of this is fair. No, madam, it's not. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. He had kind eyes. They talked. Small things at first, the weather, the traffic in Enugu, then bigger things. He told her about growing up poor, about dreams that never happened. She told him about university, about wanting to work, about parents who sold her to a man she didn't love. I'm sorry, madam, he said softly. You deserve better than this. No one had said that to her in 5 years. She started crying again. He moved to sit beside her on the bench, not touching, just present. Then somehow his hand was on her shoulder. Then she was leaning against him. You can stay in my quarters tonight, madam, he said suddenly. If the noise is too much, I can sleep in the car. She should have said no, but she was so tired, so broken. Okay. They walked to the boys' quarters. It was simple, a single room with a bed, a small table, a chair. But it was quiet, away from the sounds that were killing her spirit. I'll be outside if you need anything, madam. Please don't leave. Just sit. Talk to me. I can't be alone right now. So he sat in the chair while she sat on the bed, and they talked about small things and big things. He told her things about himself. She told him about wanting to work, about parents who sold her to a man she didn't love. You deserve better than this, he said again. She started crying. He moved from the chair to sit beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Then his arms were around her while she cried into his chest. When she looked up, their faces were too close. Madam, I should... Please, she whispered. Just tonight. I need to feel like I'm human. Please. What happened next was inevitable. 5 years of loneliness and pain poured into that small room. When it was over, Doris lay in the darkness feeling both guilty and for the first time in years like she'd taken something back for herself. Neither of them spoke about what had happened, but the next time Ozoemena brought women home, Doris left and went to the boys' quarters. And the time after that, Dubem never pushed, never demanded. He was gentle in ways Ozoemena had never been. He listened when she talked, he held her when she cried. 3 months later, Doris missed her period. She bought 5 pregnancy tests from different pharmacies. All 5 came back positive. When she told Ozoemena, he stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You are pregnant?" Then he grabbed her and lifted her off the ground. "Pregnant! Finally! Mama, come here!" The whole house erupted. They called family members, went to church for Thanksgiving, threw a party. Ozoemena even stopped bringing women home for a while. Doris played her part. She smiled, accepted congratulations, rubbed her growing belly. But every night she lay terrified because she knew the truth. The child was Dubem's. When she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, they named him Chima. Ozoemena threw a naming ceremony so elaborate, the neighbors talked about it for months. Once Chima turned 6 months old, the women started coming back. Ozoemena wanted more children. He wanted a daughter. So the pattern continued. Ozoemena brought women. Doris went to the boys' quarters. 2 years later, she gave birth to Zina. Ozoemena was overjoyed. But he wanted one more. 3 children is perfect. Doris got pregnant again. Another girl, Kosi Sochukwu. Everyone marveled at God's goodness. Only Doris and Dubem knew the truth. 8 years passed this way. Ozoemena raised the children as his own, never suspecting. He was actually a good father to them, bought them toys, enrolled them in good schools, bragged about them. He was just a terrible husband. Dubem remained the invisible driver, the man who washed cars, ran errands, drove Ozoemena to meetings. He watched his children grow from a distance, unable to claim them. Until the day 6-year-old Kosi Sochukwu collapsed at school. The school called while Ozoemena was in a meeting. "Sir, your daughter fainted. We've called an ambulance, Divine Mercy Hospital." It was closing time, so they'd sent the other children with Kosi in a school vehicle. When Ozoemena and Doris arrived at the hospital, Chima and Zina were already there, sitting in the waiting area, looking terrified. The doctors ran test after test. Dr. Chukwuma finally emerged, his face grave. "She's lost significant blood internally. We suspect a severe bleeding disorder. She needs an immediate transfusion." "Use my blood." Ozoemena didn't hesitate. "Do whatever you need." That was when they ran the compatibility tests. And that was when everything came crashing down. The scene in the hospital corridor, the one that opened this story, happened exactly as described. The impossible blood types, the testing of all 3 children, the revelation that none of them could be Ozoemena's. Doris whispered confession about the driver. The shock was absolute. Ozoemena's mother actually gasped. "That useless man who washes our cars?" But there was no time for the full explosion. Kosi Sochukwu was dying. Ozoemena called Dubem screaming, "Come to Divine Mercy Hospital now." Dubem arrived 20 minutes later, still in his uniform. He went straight to the emergency room. The transfusion took an hour. When Dr. Chukwuma came out, he nodded. The blood matched perfectly. She's stable. "Thank God," Doris whispered. "Thank God." Ozoemena grabbed her arm. "Get up, we're going home." The ride home was suffocating. Ozoemena drove like a maniac, while his mother sat in the back with Doris, radiating fury. Chima and Zina sat quietly, confused and scared. They'd heard enough at the hospital to know something terrible had happened. When they reached the house, Ozoemena threw the door open. "Pack everything. I want you out in 30 minutes. Ozo, please, pack now." Doris went upstairs while Ozoemena paced the parlor like a caged animal. Chima and Zina sat on the sofa holding hands. His mother made phone calls summoning family members to witness the disgrace. When Doris came down with 2 suitcases, the parlor was filling with people. Ozoemena's cousins, his friends, even Doris's parents who'd rushed over after the phone call. Ozoemena's mother looked at her with pure disgust. "Tape your bastard children and leave this house." Doris picked up her suitcases. Chima and Zina stood up, moving toward their mother. That's when Ozoemena saw her actually leaving, saw her walking toward the door with his children. Children he'd raised for 8 years. Children he loved, celebrated, bragged about. His something in him snapped. "So you really want to leave?" His voice was different, dangerous. "You love poverty. You want the driver? Fine, go to him. See how you will survive when you can't buy food, can't pay school fees." He moved toward her, his face twisted. "You destroyed everything. 8 years. I raised another man's children." "You destroyed it yourself," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Dubem stood there, no longer looking like a driver. His posture was different, his eyes steady. "You," Ozoemena charged toward him. "You have the audacity." His fist connected with Dubem's jaw. Dubem stumbled, but he didn't fight back. He just wiped blood from his lip and stood there. "Hit me all you want," Dubem said quietly. "It won't change what you did to her." "What I did? I gave her everything." "Everything except kindness." The room was silent. "You think you are the hero," Ozoemena laughed bitterly. "You, with your nothing life, what can you give her that I couldn't?" Respect. Someone who listened when she cried instead of being the reason she cried. Ozoemena's rage was volcanic. He called everyone, more cousins, more friends. Within an hour, the house was packed. He wanted witnesses to his wife's shame, wanted everyone to know what kind of woman Doris was. Her parents arrived looking destroyed. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. Her mother wept. Dubem stood quietly through it all while Ozoemena ranted about betrayal, about raising bastards, about being made a fool. Then Dubem pulled out his phone and made one call. "Ibrahim, bring the car around, the Bentley, and call my lawyers, all of them." The room went silent. "Who are you calling?" Ozoenoma demanded. "My driver. I need him to bring my car." "Your driver? What are you?" "Yes, my name is Dubem Okafo. I own Okafo Tech Solutions. We operate in 12 African countries. Yes, I am worth more than your entire family combined." The shock was absolute. Mouths fell open. People stared. Then Dubem began to tell his story. Holy Rosary Secondary School, sitting 3 rows behind Doris, being too poor to approach her. Going to America in 2008 with nothing but dreams. He'd worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, gone to college, started a company that had grown beyond his wildest dreams. But he'd never forgotten Doris. When he returned to Nigeria in 2020, he'd asked about her, found out she was married, accepted it. Then one day on Ogui Road, he'd stopped to buy fruit. That's when he'd seen it. A man slapping a woman so hard she stumbled. "It was Doris," Dubem said quietly, "and I decided I couldn't just walk away." He'd researched Ozoemena, found out where they lived, then he'd done something crazy, gotten himself employed as their driver, not to seduce her, just to be close enough to protect her. He'd witnessed everything, the women Ozoemena brought home, Doris's humiliation, the cruelty. That night she came to my courtyard crying. When everything changed between us, I knew it was wrong, but she was drowning and I was the only one trying to save her. The room was silent. Outside, a Bentley pulled up. A driver in uniform stepped out and opened the back door. Ozoemena stared at the car, then at Dubem, realization finally sinking in. You are actually... Yes, Dubem looked at Doris. The choice is yours. Whatever you want, I'll support you. Doris looked around the room, at her parents who'd sold her, at Ozoemena's family who'd blamed her for everything, at Ozoemena who'd made 8 years of her life hell. She took Chima and Zina's hands. We're leaving. No, Ozoemena moved to block the door. You can't take my children. Your children? Chima looked up at him, his 8-year-old voice steady. You hate my mother. I saw you many times. The words landed like stones. If that's what fathers do, maybe I don't want you as my father. Ozoemena's face went white. He looked at this boy he'd raised, this child he'd celebrated, and saw rejection. His desperation transformed back into rage. You prostitute, you turned my own children against me. God will judge you. Dubem moved forward, his voice calm but deadly. If you ever speak about her that way, if you ever come near her or these children with violence, I will make sure you rot in jail. I have evidence. 8 years of witnessing abuse, staff who will testify, medical records. He pulled out his phone. And I'll have your bride price returned by next week. Every kobo you paid, plus interest. We'll do this properly, legally. Dubem looked at Doris's parents. You sold your daughter into 8 years of hell for money. I hope it was worth it.
Her father finally looked up, shame written across his face. Doris looked at her parents. I forgave you a long time ago, but I won't forget, and you'll never make decisions about my life again. She walked out with her children on either side of her, and Dubem following behind. The Bentley driver held the door open. As the kids all went in, Doris looked back once at the house that had been her prison, and she finally said, Ozoemenam, I was with you for 8 years, nothing to show for it. You've been with other women too, nothing. I got with Dubem, 3 shots, 3 kids. You should get yourself checked. Maybe what you have down there is just water. She smiled as she saw his face flare up dangerously. Then she looked forward, got into the car, and didn't look back again, as Ozoemenam's voice was heard loudly behind them. 3 months later, Kosiso Kwechu had fully recovered. The doctors had identified her condition and put her on proper treatment. She was back to being the energetic 6-year-old she'd always been. Chima and Zina had adjusted to their new life remarkably well. They lived in a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. They went to good schools. They had a father, Dubem, who came home every evening, asked about their day, helped with homework, and never once raised his voice in anger. Doris had started working. She'd gotten a job at a firm in Enugu and was rebuilding the career she'd abandoned. The divorce had gone through quickly. Ozoemenam hadn't fought it. Word around Enugu was that he'd married a lady who got impregnated and dumped by another man because apparently Ozoemenam has a medical condition, so he can't have his own children as Doris suspected. Doris felt for the lady who gets to spend her life with Ozoemenam, but she wished them well. Maybe he'd treat her better. Just maybe. But it wasn't her problem anymore. Unknown to her, the case was the other way around. The new wife dealt with Ozoemenam. He was forced to do the house chores after he gets back from work, to cook and run errands. Whenever he complained or tried to act stubborn, the new wife threatened to leave with her unborn baby, which Ozoemenam didn't want as that baby meant everything to him. He can't lose this mother and child. No woman would want a man who is impotent, so he has accepted his fate. On the good side, Doris and Dubem were taking things slow, learning each other properly without secrets between them. He'd proposed, but she'd asked him to wait. She needed time to heal, to become whole again. He'd understood. I waited 16 years already. I can wait a little longer. One evening, they all sat together in their backyard. The children were playing football while the adults watched. Kosi scored a goal and turned to them shouting, "Did you see that?" Doris watched her daughter and felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, questions, moments when the past would rise up. Society would judge. People would talk. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Doris could breathe. She could be herself. She was worth something beyond her ability to produce children or suffer in silence. She'd made mistakes. She'd lied. She'd broken vows. But she'd survived. And sometimes, survival was its own kind of victory. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to Oma's African Tales, like this video and share it with your friends and family. Comment down below and tell us what you think. Where are you watching from? We really would love to know. Also, do you think Doris was wrong for what she did, or did Ozo Emenam push her into it? Until next time, may we all find the courage to choose peace over pretense. Goodbye.